Good morning, shareholders and investors, and welcome to the second webinar digital platform for Askari Metals. This webinar is going to be held as a series of webinars where the company will be able to provide shareholders and investors with an overview of its exploration activities, both within Namibia and in Australia, as well as give investors and shareholders an opportunity to really ask management any of the key questions that are on their mind and which we can address. So the purpose of today's webinar really is to give shareholders an overview of the exploration that's just recently kicked off at the Uis Lithium Project in Namibia, but is also to give context of the exploration activities that are currently underway in Australia across our lithium, gold, copper and rare earths assets. Recently, and you would have seen through our ASX releases, the company identified this mineralised lithium corridor of interest, and this corridor of interest covers 15 kilometres along strike, up to 5 kilometres wide. And the typical pegmatites that we have been seeing in this corridor are your absolute LCT type pegmatites, so containing all the right accessory minerals as well as abundant spodumene that's been mapped along surface of the outcrops. What we're also seeing is that a lot of the pegmatites that we've identified in this mineralised corridor haven't adequately been drill tested through the recent phases of exploration drilling. And they also haven't been sampled or mapped appropriately and adequately through the recent campaigns as well. So all this leads to the excitement and the upside that we're currently seeing, and is particularly the pegmatites that we've identified as being strong candidates for the trenching campaign which is now underway. And those pegmatites cover the K9 pegmatite as well as OP, DP and Adam, which principally lie on EPL 7345. So, as I mentioned, trenching has recently just started, so it's 111 trenches, and we're looking at those 4 main targets. Obviously, the work that we have done within that mineralised corridor of interest, we looked at the assay results from that first phase of drilling. We overprinted those with the rock sample results that we had received through multiple phases of exploration work on surface. And we looked at sort of digitising those against the geophysics and the hyperspectral work which the companies had underway now for a little bit of time. That culminated in us calculating what is known as the KRB ratios, and that area demonstrated that yes, we're in the right location for exploring these LCT type pegmatites. So trenching, as I said, just shy of 4,000 metres, 111 trenches. It has started now at the OP target. The OP target has been mapped as well. It maps along strike roughly 3 kilometres of outcrop. It is variable in terms of the outcrop. It doesn't outcrop the entire length of that package, but where we are seeing the outcrop, we are looking at along strike, and definitely there is significant connection between the outcrop areas. And it runs for approximately 700 metres wide. So it is a significant area. So the purpose of the trenching campaign is to really identify the dip and strike directions of the pegmatites there that we've got at the Uis project. That's going to be really important because, of course, having more understanding of the geometry of those pegmatites is going to give us a better design element when it comes back into the RC and diamond drilling. From a sequential perspective, the excavator begins cutting the lines across the width of the pegmatite, and it identifies and opens up that exposure of the pegmatite across the entire surface expression. A team is then mobilised into those trenching lines to clean the trench line out, and then a separate team comes through to actually conduct the channel sampling. So that work is done with an industrial sized rock saw. The unit is used to cut channels across the entire width of the pegmatite. Information is collected which then covers the mineralogy, what's been seen, the minerals, the spodumene, the albites, any other accessory minerals that are expected in those pegmatites. But also dip and strike information as well is calculated. Modal estimates of mineral abundances is something that's very important. And what that means really for the company, as I said before, is that we can then come back into the field, very high degree of conviction with our drill targets. So another important target for the company is the K9 pegmatite, which also sits in this mineralised corridor of interest. Trenching will soon start on that target, and we've already, through our site visits, identified abundant spodumene along strike of the surface expression. That pegmatite we've mapped now for approximately 2 kilometres. You will also recall Huayu cobalt They are strategic investors in Askari Metals. They acquired a 6% interest in the company in May this year. We actually hosted them on site at Uis earlier this year as well, and one of the targets to which they visited was indeed that K9 pegmatite. The response from them was very encouraging, very positive, and hence the reason why this target is going to be such an important exploration target for the company as part of this trenching campaign. So in addition to the trenching campaign running concurrently with that program, the company will also put in place a broad-scale soils and stream sediment sampling program. That program is designed to look at those areas which are under that shallow concealed transported cover, which is a focus for the company and is certainly where we believe that a lot of these hidden deposits are going to be discovered as well. Hence the reason why the company is so excited by not just the trenching campaign, but also the soil and stream sediment sampling campaign, where we identify anomalies. The trenching campaign will just expand upon those target areas as well. What it's going to lead to is the company having multiple high degree confidence targets for when drilling will actually then resume. So initially we'll be looking at campaigns of RC drilling, but then they'll be quickly succeeded with campaigns of diamond drilling as well. From a timing perspective, the company has also addressed some of the issues that were faced with respect to turnaround times with laboratory assay results. What this means for the company is it will have faster access to information, faster access to results, and it will mean that we'll be able to sort of mobilise back into the field in a much more efficient and aggressive manner. We've been very committed to building a strong team in Namibia. A lot of the people that we've built and we've brought on to the company are lithium-centric, very strong lithium expertise individuals. Recently, we appointed Bertie Rosner, Bonnie, as well as Dr. Shane Doggart. So Shane's a very highly regarded pegmatite geologist, PhD, has spent a lot of time working in Namibia along the Orange River Belt and as well as along that Cape Cross West Belt where we're very active. So Shane's addition to the team is going to be very important from the perspective of really sort of taking in some of that strong technical skills into the company to look at building the in-house sample facility, but also doing the hyperspectral work on some of the other targets that we've acquired as well. A number of targets were identified at APL 8535 from the hyperspectral work that was done. It is part of that corridor of interest as well, that mineralised corridor of interest. And there are a number of LCT type pegmatites on that licence which are currently being put in front of the trenching team as well. And the campaign from trenching will really roll out from 7345 into 8535. We expect the trenching campaign to last sort of between 3 and 4 months. But as I said before, it's going to be concurrent work programs. So whilst the excavator is trenching a lot of the targets on site, we've got a separate team that's going to then be following behind the excavator and is going to be doing the channel sampling across those exposures. That work will then sort of migrate towards assay result, and then it'll migrate towards, okay, high degree of confidence drill targets, let's mobilise a drill rig. So we expect as a company to see multiple streams of exploration ongoing, but very aggressive streams of campaign, but also very efficient, effective streams of exploration. So we believe that we're going to have a nice systemic sort of flow of news into the market, lots of information from assay results perspective as well, but also it's going to give us and really set us up for having the best chance of actually making that initial discovery and building then towards the deferral of a maiden resource as well. Another milestone that the company has been working towards is just the release of the RC and rock sample results from EPL 7345 Phase 2 drilling, as well as the Phase 1 drilling at 8535. Now, all of those results have been received by the company and we are busy digitising that information and for presentation to shareholders, so we'd expect those results to be released any day now as well. What that's going to mean for the company is that, again, it informs us on where our next stage of exploration goes, and more important than anything else, it is just going to lead us towards an expansion of that trenching campaign as well. The company is also very active in looking at other licence and acquisition opportunities in that same belt, We have identified a number of target areas which discussions are currently underway, and we've already addressed an opportunity for the company to mobilise a team into the field on some of these other targets to conduct some initial due diligence mapping sampling work as well. So as results are received from that campaign work, those results and information will be presented to shareholders and investors so that better context can be provided. The aim of those campaigns and indeed the aim of our acquisition strategy is to really build that dominant footprint in that belt, which we believe as we've mentioned previously, is heavily underexplored, but it has the benefit of all the major infrastructure from road to power to port as well. So very important for the company to maintain that aggressive acquisition strategy in line with its mandate, at the same time as what we've got a number of streams of exploration work going on in the field at our core licences as well. Now switching gears across to our Australian portfolio of assets, so covering lithium, copper, gold, as well as rare earths, and really what the company's been busy doing there as well. I suppose for context, the work that we're doing on our Australian assets is really geared towards getting those assets ready for the proposed spin-out. That is something that certainly is still on the agenda for the company. Obviously part of what we're doing at the moment is, as I mentioned, getting those assets ready. So the exploration activities that are underway there in Australia are identifying what the exploration has outlined for us to date and what the next stage looks like as well. This morning the company released an announcement with respect to the sampling campaign that was underway at the Springdale Copper Gold Project in the Lachlan Fold Belt, New South Wales. Those results have demonstrated some very interesting areas which warrant further follow-up, and the company is busy finalising what the next stage of exploration looks like on that asset as well. In terms of the work that we've done on the rare earths side of our portfolio, so that covers Barrow Creek as well as Red Peak. Red Peak being located in the Gascoyne region of Western Australia. We're still waiting for the sample results to be received from the soil survey that was conducted. Those results will, of course, once they're received, were digitised and released to the market, but also they'll be very important in terms of informing the company what the next stage of exploration looks like there as well. Similarly, for Barrow Creek, the company recently mobilised its team into the field to collect some further samples over the rare earth mineralised zone, and we combined that with a ground-based gravity and magnetic survey as well. That work has been finished now, and the company is looking to just identify the sample results as well as overprint those sample results with the geophysical work that's been conducted. In terms of our gold assets, so Burracoppin has been very important to the company in terms of the next stage of exploration out there and the delineation of the maiden resource. So that work is nearing completion. The maiden resource will be released to the market in the coming weeks. And we've also now been working with our team of geologists and resource modelling geologists to put together an exploration target report for the project as well. So that work will also be finished soon, and the results of that will be communicated to shareholders as soon as has been completed. Yari is another very important asset for the company, and I know that a lot of shareholders have been voicing some concerns with respect to the timing for the grant of the Yari licences. One of the things that I can report upon there is that the company has signed all of its access deeds and it has signed all of our heritage survey deeds as well. The licences have been recommended for grant and the company is now waiting for the grant process to be completed. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of control over that time frame. It is 9 licences covering 3 different native title groups as well as pastoralist claims, so there is a little bit of work involved there for the mines department here, but it's something that the company is very much focused on speeding up as best as it can. Previous work that we completed at Yari did identify 11 high priority targets for which we would like to resume access into the field, and the work that we're looking to roll out is going to cover both auger soil campaign surveys as well as hand grab soil sample surveys. That work again will just continue to finalise those targets, give us greater confidence over the targets, and then further work such as air core drilling will then follow on from those initial campaigns. The company also released the results recently from its soil campaign in the Kalua copper project as well. And those results really were important for the company because not only did it demonstrate the continuous high-grade nature of copper mineralisation on surface, but we also got some very interesting and very exciting results for the nickel sulfide potential of that project as well. So those results were released to the market sort of in September this year. The company has now completed the design process for a further follow-up sampling campaign, and that campaign is designed to follow those very strong magnetic features and identify sort of how extensive this nickel sulfide potential is. So the main takeaways from today's webinar is the exploration activities that we've got underway in Uis. Is this trenching campaign is going to be the key driver for the high confidence drill targets that the company is going to be delineating. We've spent considerable time building a strong team, specialists in their field, and it's the right team to be able to drive the exploration forward. The company is going to be able to maintain an aggressive exploration strategy. We now believe that with the right team in place, with the right approach from an exploration perspective, we're going to be far more efficient and effective in the field, and we're going to be able to push things forward at Uis to the point where we were on the right path in terms of building out that discovery and that deposit. That lithium mineralised corridor of interest, it is a key focus for the company. It is the right area for which we need to be positioned, and that all works hand in hand with the company then wanting to build this very dominant land position in that Uis Cape Cross belt, starting with EPL 7626 all the way through with 7345, 8535 and the other acquisition targets we've also identified along that belt. So thank you very much. That concludes the presentation component of today's webinar. So I'm going to now open up the floor to Q&A. So shareholders, as indicated, so we're now in the Q&A session of today's webinar presentation. So I'm going to start taking some of the questions that have been fed through onto the panel. So just excuse me as I just go through and read some of these questions as well. So a lot of questions have come through with respect to the Yari project, and just in terms of giving an update to shareholders in terms of where we're at with getting the permits granted and really what the next phases of exploration look like at Yari. So the Yari project, as specified, is a very important lithium asset for the company, given its large strategic land position in the eastern Pilbara there. And as you know, given that it covers more than 1,800 square kilometres, it does straddle 9 exploration licences with a number of different stakeholders and interested parties sort of involved in the process to actually having that licence or that project granted. So the company is currently in a position where heritage deeds, access deeds have been signed, as well as pastoralists agreements have also been signed covering those 9 licences. The licences themselves have actually been recommended now for grant within the Mines Department here in Western Australia. And so we're now currently just awaiting the outcome sort of those granting timeframes. Unfortunately, the company doesn't have a great sort of positioning with respect to having influence over the granting, other than what we've been able to do to date in terms of just fast tracking execution of the deeds with the relevant stakeholders and interested parties as mentioned. But as soon as those licenses are granted, we will be ready to mobilise a team into the field. Principally, where our focus is going to be with respect to Yari is following up on those exploration targets that we identified from that initial reconnaissance field program that was done on that project. So 11 high priority targets were identified. The hyperspectral data also correlated very well with those high priority areas. It's going to be the main focus as far as lithium exploration is concerned. Initially, exploration is going to start off with doing mechanised auger sampling, as well as hand sampling, as well as additional sampling around the outcrops that we had already identified, and then looking at moving into what we call an air core drilling campaign. Those results, that information will start to educate and inform the next sort of phases of exploration out there as well, which we would hope would then graduate into an RC drilling program as well. Sorry, go on, just scrolling through the questions. So another question has come through with respect to the share price, of course, and what the company is going to be able to do to address its funding requirements. Unfortunately, we are in what can only be described as a very challenging market environment. Certainly, it's something that's we're not in the minority with respect to the impacts on junior exploration companies, but be that as it may, the company is in a very strong position with respect to the exploration assets that it does have and with respect to the exploration activities that are currently underway. And it doesn't just cover the projects, the programs that we're doing at the Uis project. It also covers the assets that we're exploring here in Australia across what is copper, gold, and rare earths, as well as lithium. So, of course, the company is working with its strategic partners, Huayou Cobalt. We hosted them on site. Previously, they went to the K9 pegmatite, and we're looking at hosting them again later this month. We have numerous technical discussions with them. They're very much involved and focused in supporting the company with what we're doing exploration-wise. They've also shown significant interest in what's happening on the Australian assets, principally from a lithium perspective as well. So we believe that we've got an opportunity to really work with Huayou in a more closer format, and that's going to obviously enable the company to address its funding requirements as well. Can't scroll. Sorry, everyone. I'm having some technical difficulties with respect to the computer and being able to scroll down through the questions. Just bear with me one moment. I'm just going to plug in a mouse. Okay, thank you. No, it's been sorted. My mistake. So another question's come through just with respect to the assay results that are currently outstanding from the phase 1 program at 8535 and the phase 2 program at 7345. Now, it is unfortunate, and the company's also been frustrated by the time that it's taken to actually receive the assay results. What I can remark on now is, of course, that the assay results themselves have all been received from the laboratory, and that we are actually in the process now of digitising and modelling those, as well as just making sure that they're mapped adequately and released to shareholders in the right format. So we would look to actually have those results released to the market sometime in the next 7 to 10 days. Shareholders can then take a view with respect to the exploration results themselves, and more important than that, take a view with respect to the exploration results in context of the work that's currently underway at Uis as well. And the reason why I mentioned that specifically is obviously that lithium mineralized corridor of interest. It is an area of distinct focus for the company going forward. Certainly from the work that we've done, looking at the geophysics, looking at the hyperspectral, looking at the rock sample results, it has all led us to understanding in a more enhanced sense where the exploration efforts need to be focused and concentrated upon. And if you look at EPL 7345 in isolation, it looks at that K9 pegmatite, it looks at OP, DP, PS, and other pegmatite targets that sit within that structural corridor as well. Now, what's really important for the company as well is that a lot of the rock sample results that we collected through various mapping phases, they'll also be released into the market. Again, shareholders will be able to take a view with respect to those results and again, how they line up with that mineralized corridor of interest. Again, all that work that we're doing right now is geared towards how can we fast track exploration? How can we get the company back on track in terms of making those initial discoveries and building itself up to the delineation of its deposit? One question that's also come through is, just given the recent team appointments, what are we hearing from the boys in the field? And it's really important to note for the company because we've actually appointed specialists in the field. These guys are lithium-centric individuals. They know pegmatites. They know that Cape Cross Uis belt very well. And they, more important than that, they know how to explore for them, not just in outcrop, but they know how to explore for these deposits under shallow concealed cover, which we have a combination of at Uis as well. Now, one of our most recent appointment was Bonnie. Bonnie is an ex-geologist he's a geologist, ex-Andrada geologist, I should say. And why that's so important for the company is obviously he's seen the V1, V2 pegmatites. He has seen Lithium Ridge, which is another Andrada ground. He's seen B1, C1 or spodumene hill. He knows the characteristics of those pegmatites. Now, when he walks up to the trenching and the excavator work that's been done, particularly on OP, he takes a view that those pegmatites are inherently identical to what he's seen, what's currently being mined, what's demonstrating these large volume of thick intercepts at very good economic grade as well. So the company's got significant confidence with respect to the targets that have been generated. It's got a lot of confidence with respect to the guys that actually are heading up the exploration activities. And more than important than that, we've got a lot more confidence with respect to the areas that we're actually exploring within as well. Questions also come in with respect to just timeframes, and I suppose the company has fallen foul in terms of adhering to some of the timeframes, not sort of indeed in terms of the control, it being outside of the company's ability. A lot of the delays that we've been facing have been faced due to laboratory turnaround times, as has frustrated the process. Now, as I've mentioned previously, and as has been mentioned in the announcements of the company as well, we are addressing that. We have aligned ourselves with a different laboratory. We've got a better prep station happening in Windhoek now as well. We've got a better laboratory through ACT Labs also, which is able to give us faster access to turnaround times for the samples that are delivered to the lab as well. What that means is that we get access to the information a lot faster. Shareholders get access to the information a lot faster as well. It also means that we can turn around very rapidly and deploy teams back into the field to follow up on the prospects and the additional targets that are generated. In addition to that, and it really complements what we're doing as far as trying to roll out these multiple streams of exploration at Uis, is we've got the LIBS machine, we've got the XRF machine. We're also at the moment constructing a small scale in-house prep facility. All of these are geared towards, again, giving the company access to more information so that we can actually have a parallel system running where samples are sent to the laboratory for check, but we're also prepping and doing our own analysis with the in-house facility that we build using the XRF, using the LIBS machine. Again, we can rely on that information. We can publish that information under the JORC code, and we can then also deploy teams into the field in real time whilst we're already there, rather than having to sort of take people out of the field, wait 3 months, put people back into the field. It'll mean we've got a much better, smoother sequential flow of exploration, which will obviously lead to a better understanding of the exploration activities and the information that stems from it. But it also means that we've got more momentum in terms of the news flow and information that shareholders then, at the end of the day, get to see from the company's activities as well. Another question's come through just regarding the acquisitions that the company has made and why these are important and what the rationale is behind those as well. First, I want to just start by saying, from a higher level perspective, that Namibia is a heavily underexplored region when it comes to critical minerals in particular, and mostly relevant towards of course, lithium. What we have identified at the Cape Cross Uis belt is a significant opportunity for a company such as Askari to come through and really consolidate some of those high profile licenses where a lot of exploration has been undertaken previously for tin and principally tantalum, but lithium wasn't really looked at previously because it just wasn't an important commodity or of any focus or interest. Now, what we've also been able to do with respect to our ability to mobilize and seize some of these opportunities is the fact that we've built that team in country. We're at a distinct advantage compared to many other companies that are still, I would say, remote control explorers. We're very different. We've built a significant team in country that are ready to mobilise and seize upon these opportunities as well. It also means that we're far more targeted in our approach to the acquisition. So we're looking at acquisitions in isolation. We're looking at them and collecting information from the mines department. We're doing our own desktop due diligence, and we're doing our own hyperspectral and geophysical studies before we actually engage with the license holder. So we're going into these discussions with a lot more information, certainly more information than what the license holder themselves actually controls. And that means that we're far more educated with respect to the potential value proposition that sits there. There are 2 licenses in particular the company is very advanced with on exclusivity and due diligence. Once this information itself is digested and we've got the results from the work that we're doing in the field, shareholders will then be updated with respect to those potential opportunities as well. Of course, working hand in hand with that is the work that we're doing on our core licenses, hence the reason why we're focused on that Cape Cross West Belt, because everything that we're doing right now is very much complementary to sort of the activities that are unfolding there as well. One other question that's just come through as well is just in respect to when can we have a drilling campaign resume at Uis? And that's a really important question, and that's obviously one of the questions that I would ask our team sort of on an almost daily basis. As a team, we work extremely well together, and we function very, very well in terms of how often we meet and how often we're discussing the exploration activities that are underway. The work that we're doing on the trenching campaign, it's then going to, as I've mentioned during the webinar, it's then going to graduate to the channel sampling work. We will get the assay results back from that work, and it's going to inform a far more high conviction, high confidence drilling program for the company. Where we're also getting to, of course, is with that lithium mineralized corridor of interest, the understanding of the company is far more enhanced. We know where the exploration has to be undertaken. The trenching campaign is going to be incredibly valuable information for the company in terms of mapping the geometry of those pegmatites, looking at the strike and dip direction, looking at how wide they are, looking at mineral abundances from the surface outcrop as well. It's going to mean that when we actually do resume drilling, we've got a far better understanding of the drill design, and we'll be far better in terms of execution of those campaigns as well. Now, one of the questions that hasn't been asked during the webinar, but it's something that I think is important for shareholders to understand as well, is that sort of the activities that are underway at Uis with respect to the trenching, the excavator, the channel sampling program, these aren't programs that take an extensive period of time to cover. The excavator itself is working incredibly fast in terms of cutting its lines. And what we're seeing in the southern portion of the OP target in particular is a very nice, very wide target where the channel sampling will be mobilised as soon as possible. Cleaning crews are currently in there cleaning out those trench lines so we can mobilise our channel sampling crew ASAP. That information, as I mentioned before, is going to educate the drill campaign. So what I would like to explain to shareholders is that whilst it might look like the company has pivoted back to sort of the basics of exploration from a trenching and channel sampling perspective, this information, this activity is going to drive future drilling campaigns. And we're looking to resume drilling as soon as possible. And if there's an opportunity, certainly before the close of this year as well, we are that aggressive as far as our mobilisation is concerned. I've got a question with respect to the catalysts and what shareholders can expect over the next 6 to 12 months. I have addressed a lot of the value creation catalysts for the company that are coming over the next 6 to 12 months. But to break it down and really to summarise that, it is the results from the trenching campaign, it is the results from the channel sampling campaign, it's then that graduation into drilling, and then it's that continuum. It's that multiple phase of exploration. It's that continuum of exploration activity at Uis. It's not just, hey, we do the trenching, we do the channel sampling, take a break, then we resume, we'll do some drilling, excavator goes off site. It's not that at all. The excavator stays on site It's going to trench the targets that are identified to date at 7345. It's then going to move to other targets that are identified, not just from the RC drill results that we'll be releasing to the shareholders and the rock sample results as well. It'll also move to 8535, where there's additional targets that have also been generated. And then systematically, it'll move to some of the other licenses that we acquire in the region as well. But whilst the excavator itself is moving through its different targets, the channel sampling team is similarly moving through its different targets. Then the drill program kick off. So you'll have this continued momentum with respect to exploration activities. And that's what shareholders can really come to sort of expect from the company over the next 6 to 12 months. It's multiple streams of exploration running concurrent with each other. It's then going to roll out sort of much bigger programs, and that's going to help us to fast track and get to that point of making that initial resource discovery as well. One of the other things that I haven't mentioned, and I did cover off on it during the webinar, but to give you some more context with respect to the soil and stream geochemical sampling programs as well. Those programs are very important as an exploration tool for the company as well, because we have this combination of outcrop plus shallow concealed transported cover. Identifying sort of where other lithium anomalies and other pathfinder mineral anomalies sit on those covered areas is also going to be very important. I mentioned before, of course, that we've got that lithium mineralized corridor of interest. So we're working within a band. It's 15 kilometers along strike, 5 kilometers wide. We're working within a band where we know these soil geochem surveys need to be undertaken, and we know, looking at the strike of the outcrop, where it is that we can expect a continuation of that pegmatite, albeit that it does dip undercover. So they're informed programs, they're educated programs, and the benefit that we'll have there, of course, is that information will then generate additional targets. The trenching campaign will then expand itself onto those additional targets as well, and then those targets will then graduate on a case-by-case basis into a drill program. I've got a really interesting question here from Claire. So with respect to the capital requirements of the company, and if there's an opportunity for existing shareholders to participate in those as well. So they're very fluid discussions that the company has internally. As I mentioned before, we've got the benefits of having Huayou Cobalt as a strategic partner within the company. We believe that where the company needs to get to at the moment is a very purposeful and very strict capital raising initiative that is really driven towards getting the company into that next value catalyst. So we definitely sort of look at an opportunity for existing shareholders to participate as well, but those, as I said before, the discussions are very fluid. Our focus at the moment is these technical conversations with Huayou Cobalt, getting their technical team back into the site. As I mentioned, they only saw the K9 pegmatite. They haven't seen some of the other targets that we have identified and where trenching has been undertaken. So I think that the benefit of having those parties on board is going to be very important, and seeing the other targets for them is going to give them a greater degree of confidence and comfort with respect to the activities that the company's undertaking. And they definitely agree through our discussions that the company is on the right path. Ideally, it's exploration that we could have been undertaking sort of at the time of acquisition, but we elected to go with a campaign of reconnaissance style drilling to test the pegmatite outcrops as well. But that information, as I mentioned before, has also been very useful in terms of educating sort of where the company is going with respect to its current rollout of exploration activity as well. So I've got another question here from Ben. So just regards to recent political moves in Namibia, and does it fit with Askari's future plans? So certainly the Namibian government is, I suppose, confronted by a unique situation, but it's not unique in terms of the fact that many African nations are kind of approaching these sort of issues on the same understanding. And what I mean by issues, I refer to the sale of unprocessed lithium ores, of raw pegmatite ores from country. Now, what the Namibian government has said to us during our consultation and our time spent with them in office is that they're looking to really incentivize companies to work with government and to work with local stakeholders, local community members, to ensure that there's a clear pathway for their own population to benefit from the extraction of lithium and other critical minerals from country. What that means is, of course, they're trying to incentivize companies to work with the government to put in place beneficiation systems or beneficiation plans. Not so much that you need to go all the way through to lithium chemical production, but definitely an opportunity to actually produce a concentrate in country, something that they're driven towards, trying to make sure that it is kind of like a mainstay for Namibia. As I mentioned during the webinar, Namibia is obviously a great beneficiary of exploration and of mining, given that it has road, power and port access, makes it a very unique investment destination, certainly for Askari, but certainly for other companies also. The fact that shipping out of Walvis Bay means that you can go through to the Americas, into Europe and into Asia, means that you've got a good depth of customer base available to you as well. From our perspective, yes, it does definitely fit within our plans. We've never been the sort of company that wants to look at a DSO type operation. It's not, from a cost perspective, it doesn't make sense. But certainly from our perspective, the opportunity of actually producing a concentrate in country is something the company is very much focused on rolling out as well. I've got a question from Marcus. When would we anticipate the first results of the trenching campaign? So this is a conversation we had just last night with Cliff and Bertie on site. And it is around making sure that we actually batch the samples in smaller quantities so that we can make sure that information is flowing out to our shareholders, into the market, but also to ourselves on a very systematic basis. Obviously, the benefit that we get there is that if we do need to do infill channel sampling, for example, or infill trenching, given that we're sending out small batches of samples, means we get the results back sooner, which means that we can respond to those results a lot faster as well. But also what we are thinking and what we're looking at right now is, as I mentioned before, in the southern section of the OP target, we've got a very significant ballooning out of that surface expression. The company has put a lot of urgency with respect to the team focusing on and prioritising that particular area. And that's going to be sort of a very major target for the company, hence the reason why we want to accelerate things on that particular area as well. So a question from Simon is, when's drilling in the corridor of interest going to start? I have addressed that to a large extent. It is going to be driven by the results of the channel sampling campaign and the trenching campaign, but the company is looking to accelerate its drilling activities back at Uis, and is looking to address sort of some of the delays, potentially you could describe them as, that have been faced previously. And also just addressing some of the expectations that we have as a company for our own exploration team, and that we think that shareholders also have of us as a company. So where I'm leading towards with respect to the response here is that the company is looking to accelerate not just RC drilling, but also diamond drilling. And also just making sure that the focus now, as we know it, is in that corridor of interest. The faster we can address the targets, the more information we get from them through the channel sampling, through looking at dip and strike, through looking at the surface expression, the mineral abundances, all that information is going to help to educate the drilling campaign. So it's important exploration work that we're doing right now, and we're going to end up with a far more efficient and a much more high confidence drill target and a better drill design out of it at the end as well. I've got a question from Matt, just with respect to the plans to partner up with Andrada, given their presence around Uis and our assets. Certainly, I mean, the discussions that we've had with Andrada today have been very amicable, very friendly, definitely from the perspective that we're able to work with them and share knowledge and insight with respect to what they've seen in exploration versus what we're seeing in exploration. and sort of in some respect comparing notes. As far as it goes for the company working with Andrada and as far as a partnership perspective, that remains to be seen. It's something that potentially could happen in the future. As I indicated, sort of through our announcements and also through the first webinar series that we presented, certainly the idea of consolidating this region from our perspective is very important. I think ultimately it'll make sense to have some form of a consolidation take place with your neighbour as well, given they've got the processing infrastructure in place. But certainly from our perspective, we obviously want to prove the value in our projects before we look at sort of partnering up with them or with anyone indeed as well. I've got a question from Claire. It's suggesting that any meaningful drill assay results will be plus 12 months out. Not the case. Thank you, Claire, for your question. Certainly the company, as I mentioned before, we have addressed the lab assay issues that we've been facing with a new laboratory now on team, and we're getting access to those assay results in the sample batches much faster than what we have been previously. And this is regarding sort of the samples that have been collected from the rock and also the orientation surveys that have been done. So they are definitely living up to the expectations of being a much faster turnaround laboratory for us. Certainly with diamond or RC drilling, even access to information, access to the assay results will be a lot faster for the company. So we're expecting to see quite a strong and steady flow of assay results coming through from the exploration campaigns as well. So I've got time just for one final question. In terms of a question here from Simon with respect to the Yari permits, yes, absolutely. I expect to be able to publish an update for shareholders in the near future, just with respect to some of the advertising or the native title advertising that sort of gets underway. There's one of the things that I failed to mention earlier is that sort of even if it is a case that certain licenses that comprise that Yari project do get granted on a selective basis, the company has still been able to identify which licenses that we feel will be granted soonest. And then it means, of course, that we can mobilise teams into the field on those particular licenses whilst we're still waiting for other licenses to be granted. So it's certainly not a case that we have to say to ourselves, oh, 9 licenses at Yari, have to wait for all 9 licenses to be granted before we mobilise a team into the field. Not true at all. If 2, 3, even 1 license gets granted, likelihood is that we've already identified targets on that license. The opportunity then remains for the company to mobilise a team into the field on that particular license and actually start to get exploration underway out there as well. So that's probably more of a systematic approach that the company can look to roll out with respect to Yari, but it'll also work hand in hand with the other projects that we're also exploring for, not just at Uis, but everything that the company has here in Australia as well. So that wraps up the Q&A session for the webinar series for this morning. If shareholders do have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to the company. My email address is very openly available on announcements, so please feel free just to reach out if anything hasn't been answered, and I look forward to hosting you at the next webinar series as well.